Well everyone, the first of the post-content balance patches has dropped, and honestly, this one is pretty good. I have a lot to talk about because I think there was some pretty clear direction with the changes to these weapons. So I'm excited to talk about them. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and let's do this. Okay, let's start with the one everyone's been critiquing. Splattershot is getting a slight velocity and range buff. The exact numbers are on the screen here, so it's not going to match 52, but it will be a little bit closer, and a lot of people are very confused. However, I think this is one of the better shooter buffs they're doing. Not only is this not increasing paint whatsoever, but what splatter shots are doing, mainly V shots right now, is running like 3 mains of charge up and spamming the ever-loving crap out of their special. Shot already got 2 points for special nerfs, Zuka already got multiple nerfs, so they're trying to go the buff route with this instead. Make sure the weapon's power isn't being toned back too much, and make it so the weapon is incentivized to fight more, which is going to provide competition not just for V shot, but it's also going to make Tenatech a lot more competitive with Neo Splash, which is a support shooter that could absolutely use more of that. You can definitely argue that this buff isn't needed, and I think it's more than fair to say that Neo Splash should have been 210, and that might have been another good way of going about this, but I think the change making Shot lean a bit more to its fighting capabilities to provide more competition in a much needed role where there's too many spammy support options is probably a good idea. Splattershot Pro got a reduction of spread by about 7%. They really seem to be wanting to increase this weapon's ability to fight without giving it some kind of frame rate buff. Between this and the damage one, it's pretty clear that they're trying to just make the weapon feel a little bit more consistent when shooting at enemies. Before we get into the other ones, there's actually a note for Splattershot and Splattershot Pro specifically, where the devs state they have the intent of expanding the range of situations the main weapons can handle, and they have specifications that are the benchmark for various other weapons. By improving these, they intend to make room for improvement of specifications for weapons with similar distance specializations as those weapons in future balance changes. Now, does this mean the specialization for a lot of mid-range weapons, including stuff like dualies potentially, or does it just mean, hey, we're opening the door to a bunch of shooter range buffs? I don't know, but I hope it is not the second one. More buffs is generally a good thing, but if there's one class they should be careful about, it's this one. I think the ones they did in this patch are fine, but hopefully in future this doesn't overdo it. We don't want to repeat the mistake we did in S2. Luna Blaster is finally getting a radius buff, and not that pathetic literally 0.5 unit buff it got last time. This is a 6% radius buff. It stole it from Range Blaster. This is going to increase it by approximately this much. Luna Blaster in S1 was a radius size of 4.0, so it is not going to be as much as Clash and S-Blast, but it's definitely going to be a lot closer. This is a really big buff because this is what Luna has needed. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This was the only real path forward for this weapon, and the devs have been dancing around trying to do this buff for the past 7 years, and they finally did it. Luna doesn't have amazing kits, but I think the vanilla one has a bit of a chance to thrive, and I hope we see it. L3 and H3 are getting ink consumption buffs. These are slightly reverting nerfs they got back in Splatoon 2. L3 didn't really need this, it's a kit problem, but it's not by that much. H3 on the other hand is actually in the area it's really needed a buff in. It needs to paint a little bit better to get coolers, so the added uptime will help, and the H3D kit plays heavily around its splash wall, and it's gonna get more shots after that. H3D actually recently did pretty well in an area cup, and it's clear the bubble buffs have helped that a lot, so adding this to the mix might make H3 a lot better of a tournament contender, which would be awesome. And the devs just continue giving buffs in the right areas this patch. GooTuber is getting a 4-frame charge time increase. The area that deals 100 damage will be approximately 3 frames faster. Once again, this has been the biggest problem with the weapon. Its charge time is too slow. Now, I don't think GooTuber is going to be anything insane. The vanilla one has a good kit, so maybe. I guess it also got a slight torp buff. However, I still think that GooTuber is pretty behind when it comes to stats and also a very difficult weapon. So if Squiffer is struggling, I don't think GooTuber is going to be that much better. That being said, if Vanilla Goo sees uses on a few places, it wouldn't surprise me that much. Dowser Dualies is having a slight end lag reduction by about 3 frames after its dodge roll. Again, one of the main parts the weapon needs buffs in. Paint would be another one, but is very risky obviously, so making the weapon a little bit more mobile and reducing the end lag of the dodge roll you're forced to play around is a very impactful change. Dowser saw some niche use into bubbles before, and maybe this will help it see a little bit more, but I'm a little bit less sure of that. Undercover Umbrella regeneration time has been reduced from 4.0 to 3.7 seconds. You know, we just had too many buffs in a row that were in the right direction, so it's good to know they still have absolutely no intent of fixing Umbrella's damage. Awesome. Splatana Wiper's getting a buff. It looks like they're not going to try to make it better by fixing Hammer, unfortunately, but in this case, they made the charge slash 2 frames faster. That's a really good buff. Splatana Wiper is known for being a fast weapon, and so speeding it up even further is going to add on top of that strength, and it also benefits from the Torp buff I'll get into later. Next is onto the sub-weapons, where they finally actually did some stuff. We got buffs to Autobomb, Torp, and Angle Shooter, which is great since sharking has been a bit more of a problem, and we didn't buff Wavebreaker for some reason. Autobomb is a very simple one. Its detection range is increased by roughly 8%, making it a little bit easier to find opponents, and Torp got a buff and a nerf. The sub will take a little bit longer to transform into its locked-on state against an enemy, meaning you'll have a bit more time to shoot it down. However, the velocity when thrown is increased by 3%, which will mean it travels further and has more throwing range. This is really good because it's much easier to get Torp on the sides or behind someone where it's going to get more of an impact. And this also means that Torp roll physics might finally match where they were in Splatoon 2, because if you didn't know, that got nerfed between games. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it happened. And now it finally is going to be a little bit more normal. Rapid Torp combos are back to form. Yeah, so the change to line marker was not good. It's 5% faster slash 5% further traveling. We're never going to get line damage, are we? Yeah, this doesn't really do anything, I'm sorry. This is the least impactful buff here. Fizzy Bomb got a slight change. They're actually adjusting the way they bounce so that the explosions don't move the Fizzy Bomb as much. This means the explosions are going to be a little bit closer together, giving them higher damage to targets nearby, but making them a bit weaker at chasing opponents running away from them. More importantly though, this is going to reduce the paint if you have 2 or more explosions. Fizzy spam for paint has been very common since Fizzy's inception, and it's about time it got toned back. To compensate though, the amount of paint put on the floor when it's not fully charged is increased. If this helps Fizzy Bomb's paint trail, this can make single fizzying to move like a bit of a weaker curling bomb a much better strat, which would be awesome. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a net nerf, but I think Fizzy will be in a much healthier spot. And again, really good adjustments for Fizzy, Torp, and Autobomb in all the areas it really needed it. Unfortunately, we did not get a Tri-Strike nerf, but I'm a little more okay of it because of the special they chose to buff. BOOYAH Bomb got a lot this patch. First off, it's able to charge up faster when allies are booyahing for the BOOYAH Bomb. By how much? We don't know, but this is going to make it more likely that you can get the BOOYAH Bomb off if people are helping you. So if you see a BOOYAH Bomb on your team, you guys better be booyahing for it because that will matter a lot more now, and that's going to make it a bit harder to punish. In addition to that, the radius of BOOYAH Bomb is about 5% larger, meaning its damage and paint will be a little bit further, and its damage to big bubblers is increased by 33%. I just talked about this in a video where BOOYAH had a bit more balanced damage to bubble than Tri-Strike, but whatever, we kind of need more bubble counters, so I guess it's fine. While from a game design perspective, I think the matchup is a little bit more boring now. It at least is the entire BOOYAH Bomb rather than one of your 3 strikes, so it's not that bad, and out of all the specials this game has, BOOYAH is one of the most important ones to buffs in terms of the weapons it's on and how healthy it is for the game, so I'm just so happy to see it. Bubble is not done getting adjusted down a little bit though. While it's not nerfed directly, in addition to the BOOYAH change, Zinc Mini and Mint Decavitator are both getting plus 10 points for special, which was pretty expected. Before I get into even more final thoughts, Tricolor is adjusting it so you can see the names of the players on the turf map who are on the opposite attacking team. It's funny to see they're still adjusting that. There's a bit more dev notes that I mentioned here. I already read out the Splattershot one, but if you want to read, here are the other ones. And again, I really like these. It's especially cool to see that they have noticed that BOOYAH Bomb's slower speed has mattered with the fast-paced matches between experienced players, and so they're adjusting that directly. To me, this shows they're aware of the faster-paced matches Splatoon 3 has, and if anything, they seem to like it, which is awesome. Once again, they noted that we'll get a change in balance patches based on long-term analysis. I'm willing to bet this means we're going to get a balance patch at the end of every season instead of twice a season, which I'm fine with. Overall, there's definitely a bit more buffs they could have done to stuff like Wavebreaker, or a little bit more nerfs to stuff like Neo Splash and Tri-Strike. But for the most part, the game is in such a good spot right now that I'm kind of okay with what they're doing. There is still a lot of weapons rising in the meta. There was just an Area Cup recently where H3 and S-Blast were able to get into top 4, both of which got buffed. So there's still so many things developing right now that it makes sense not to do too much. And even for stuff like Neo Splash and Tri-Strikes, the increased competition from stuff like Splattershot might end end up helping with that problem anyway. So I think we're going to be pretty much fine for the next 3 months or so. By then, maybe there'll be more they need to do, but for the time being, I really appreciate the buffs in this patch being a lot more focused on what needed to change. There were a lot less random, meaningless buffs thrown around, and I think having them be more thought out on fixing the issues that need to happen is a much better way of balancing the game that I have been really waiting for. So good job to the devs on this one. This was a really nice balance patch. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.